why there's a common phenomenon known as practice as you preach. So therefore, what we say for the national education policy, there are major challenges, and amongst us to understand that and what are the new challenges and what are the things forward. We are fortunate enough to have the persons who are at the helm of affairs to understand that they're all correlated with the education. And as they say that a thing which is close to heart of someone can express his better way. They say because जो आवाज दिल से निकली उसकी बात ही कुछ अलग है. Amongst us, I'll just, since we have 3 persons and we will also be taking question answers, I will just give a brief what we said, bird eye view of the national education policies. The same way with the speakers, I will just give a bird eye view because they have such a resume or a biodata to the effect that even 30 minutes giving each one's their journey of success and journey of path in their life itself can take the entire time. Time is the biggest essence in law also, they say. Professor Dr. Sandeep Sancheti is the Vice Chancellor of SRM IST Chennai and is also the past president of the Association of Indian University, New Delhi. Formerly, he was president of Manipal University, Jaipur, director NIT Delhi, director NITK Surat Kal. He has also served as a director in charge NIT Trichupalli, NIT Calicut, School of Planning and Architect, SPA Delhi, and member director NIT Goa, NIT Pondicherry, and NIT Sikkim, and has more than 36 years of teaching, research, and administrative experience. Dr. Ashwini Sharma, Pro Chancellor and Pro Term Vice Chancellor, Vijay Bhumi University, Karjat, Mumbai, is a former president of Association of Indian Universities, New Delhi, and former Director General, NILIT, having 36 years of experience in the field of education and administration, and has worked in close relation with the government agencies and has earned his doctorate in the e-governance, a new management tool for better performance in the government to citizen transactions, a case study of Rajasthan from the University of Rajasthan. His contribution led to in association as a CEO designated as the managing director with the Rajasthan State Government Organization for almost 7 years, which was chaired by the Chief Secretary of Rajasthan. He has successfully led the National Institute of Electronic and Information Technology, NILT, a body from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MEITY. Government of India as a CEO designated as Director General for 5 years, initiated online education and assessment in 2012. He has also been a member of the Apex Committee with the AICTE, MHRD, Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, Government of Rajasthan, etc. for setting up the universities, improvement, quality education. So Mr. Puneet would have been thinking as to what the 2 persons have been introduced, but where am I? I thought a person who is himself a celebrity and who is himself anchoring on the DD, he needs no introduction as such, though I would say for Mr. Ashwini as well as for Dr. Sandeep, they too do not require any introduction because once their resume is so, I'm just reminded of a movie dialogue which says, ये तो अभी trailer है मेरे दोस्त, picture तो अभी बाकी है. So they have so much knowledge, all 3. Once you are introducing such speakers, at the same time you start getting a feeling that there is so much to explore. But at the same time, when I was reading the resume of Professor Sandeep and Dr. Ashwini, I found that 3 factors were common between the both of them. That they were academicians, they had 36 years of experience, and they were all both the past presidents of AIU. And as they say that the birds of same flock fly together. And that is why probably we are all on a common platform for a purpose of knowledge sharing. Without taking much time, I will ask my dear friend, Dr. Puneet Sharma, to take over the mantle and put forward as to how we will proceed with today's webinar. Over to you, Dr. Puneet.
Thank you, Vikasji. First of all, many congratulations for this journey during this Corona pandemic. You could explore, I mean, this is 158th show. So show must go on, and you have rightly chosen the subject for today, new education policy, bird eye view. I'm sure this will be more than bird eye view. This will be a holistic 360-degree angle analysis of the new education policy. And I'm sure the deliverables will be excellent because the kind of experience Professor Sancheti sir is having, Dr. Ashwini Kumar Sharma ji is having, this is phenomenal. They both have been icon in their respective fields. And not only they have, created new dimensions, they have created new paths, they have new policies as well. So coming back to the topic today, the new education policy, let me give you a brief about a journey of this new education policy. First policy on education was introduced in the year 1968, then second in 1986, and which was further modified in 1992. And 2009, the Act of Right to Education was introduced. And the third education policy is going to be a major change, rather overhauling in the whole education system, NEP, New Education Policy, which was approved on 29th of July 2020, which is after a gap of 34 years. So slightly going back to the foundation of this education policy, Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, he was given this assignment. A committee was constituted in year 2017, and they finally gave a final draft in the year 2019, May 2019. So the second policy, and just the prior to this policy, which was introduced in 1986, which was on access and equity on education. Access means availability, equity means fairness. So that was the need of the hour at that time. But now changes with the changing time, things have changed drastically. So now this new policy is about quality education, access to quality education. So access is still there, because in lot many remotest areas of country, the access to education is still a challenge. Access to internet connectivity, which is an integral tool in new education system. Digital interventions are integral part of new education. So the main purpose of NEP is to design a framework for both school and higher education in India. So I'm starting with now, coming to Professor Sancheti, to you, what are the major reforms in education system which are proposed in NEP 2020? Professor Sancheti.
Thank you, Punitji, for kind introduction and also this opportunity. Also to Vikasji for setting the tone and also conducting lots and lots of webinars to educate people in general, in masses, and in particular here in this case, the advocates, as you were mentioning to us. I'm very happy to be with my friend, Dr. Ashwini Kumarji, also, who is also the co-panelist. It'd be wonderful to share my thoughts on the new education policy, the bird's eye view. And for that, if you don't mind, I'll take probably support of sharing the slides. If the administrators can allow me to share the slide, it would be nice. But as has already been said, that the new education policy has come after a long time. In the meantime, between last 34 years, between the last one and this one, I think we had a lot of other committees which were made in between, and those committees were named as Yashpal Committee, if some of you probably know that. And those committees were also, I would say, the Hari Gautam Committee, the former UGC chairman, both of them. The committee was also, one of the committee was also called as TSR Subramaniam Committee. But for some reasons or others, other reasons, the whole thing got kind of subsided time and again. But fortunately, this policy has captured most of the thoughts from the other people's effort as well as their own effort. The best thing about this policy is that it is a people's policy or public's policy, if you can say, because it is with a huge consultative process. That's the most important thing. At one point of time last year, around July 2019, when they were seeking feedback or initial remarks, I was once again kind of thinking that this committee might also fail for the simple reason that there were around more than 2.25 lakh inputs which were given at that point of time to the committee, which was in addition to various consultative processes and other things. I myself was involved from 4 or 5 different forums called EPSI, CII, FICCI, then SRM, and then AIU. From each one of them, we had given feedback. And you can imagine that people like us, when we write, we tend to write many things. And therefore, the feedbacks were also very, very long enough for them to digest or use. So I was having a fear that would it also get lost, but it didn't. fortunately, credits to Professor Kasturi Ranganji and his committee, various members who are there, who are known and who have worked hard, and we keep meeting them. And therefore, this policy has come. For me, this policy is based on reforms, and therefore it has a potential to transform. So I'll just make use of 2 slides here to explain the general concept of this particular NEP. And it's reform based. And one of the biggest reform, if you have heard, is the dismantling of the so-called popular councils, which were 17, 18. Fortunately for you, the Bar Council has not been touched, and so is the equivalent of Medical Council has not been touched, but rest of them have been brought under the single umbrella of unifying things. So that is the biggest reform, if I may say so. So there are many reforms which are there. Second thing is, this policy for me is a policy with dreams. Dreams means something big. Dreams means something which will be also sometimes difficult to achieve. Doesn't matter, but why shouldn't we dream big? I think that is the concept here. So if I'm thinking, I should think big and I should dream big, and that is what this policy has done. An example of that is giving 10,000 institutions a power to award the degrees. Right now, we are having nightmares even with 1,000 universities that we are unable to control many things, and many parameters and various other things are there. And this 1,000 is of course a recent one. Till 3 years back, we were probably hanging around 700 only, 750 only. And so imagine the growth. And once this goes to 10,000 in the next 5, 10 years, 15 years, you can imagine the task we have in hand. But it's a good thing, because without what you call the institutions being empowered, they point fingers only at the council, saying that council is making us do wrong things or not giving us flexibility. Once you have the autonomy and once you have the degree awarding power and you do the curriculums and examinations and everything, then obviously you cannot point fingers at others why you are not doing good education. So I think in that sense, it's a dreamy thing. And it will obviously propel us for next 15 to 20 years. It has to be every now and then. You cannot make the policy. You cannot change the structure of your home or the main body of your home every now and then. You can do minor internal corrections. And that is why I expect that at least 15 to 20 years, this will drive. Policy itself says that some of the targets to be achieved are by 2035. And therefore, I put the minimum as 15 years. But by the time the new one comes, it will probably be 20 years. And therefore, I'm saying that. And the best part of it is that it is covering very, very nicely, strongly, seamlessly early childhood education to the postgraduate education. I'm not an expert in the school education, but I will simply say that it is covering everything, which is good. Remodeling, reshaping, rethinking, or going away from the old past, which was not proving to be very good, I think is something very nice. So it's covering an entire gamut of what you call the education. That's something very important. Internationalization is seen to be important in this policy, which was hanging in the balance for last 10 to 15 years. I still remember 2009-10, when the Congress government was there, Kapil Sibal ji had introduced this particular bill of foreign education, but it's still, till now, it has not seen the light of the day as a bill. But now fundamentally internationalization is coming into the picture, and there was a need for this. You know that every convocation, every important meeting, the leaders, political or otherwise, will say none of our institutions are in top 100 or 200 or 300 in the world. One of the prime reason is we have shut our doors to international domains. We have not embraced people of different dimensions and backgrounds and their diversity, and therefore we have not done good. Of course, India itself is very, very diverse, but that doesn't mean that we cannot have few from outside. And therefore, this opening up is something very important. And this opening up is not limited to them coming to our campus. We can also go outside and explore the new vistas. And we'll certainly go to Africa. And of course, all the South Asian and Middle East countries and various other places where we are going, including Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore also, we are trying our efforts there. Some of the important feature, I think there was a small mention in the introduction part, both by Vikas ji and Puneet ji maybe, that access and equity are something very core to the government when they drive, because they want to increase the gross enrollment ratio and do various things which are there. But I think over a period of time, last 5-10 years, I would say easily, government was working on access, equity, quality, accountability, and of course transparency, which is important, particularly from government's point of view. And they have been further emphasized. That's very, very nice. What is now required, in my opinion, and which I hope would be indirectly getting embedded into this policy, will be the framework of speed, efficiency, and diversity. Speed is very important because otherwise we will attain the levels which we want to, but 10 years after others have attained, then there is no point. If the efficiency, which is generally very poor in our Indian system, whether it's financial efficiency or time efficiency, I think we need to improve. Whatever has to be done in 1 year has to be done in 1 year or less than 1 year and not more than 1 year. I think that is what I refer to efficiency. And diversity, I have already said that let singular institution or the university with single kind of a domain called AIIMS or IIT or IIM or something like that are fine. They have done its job. They are fantastic. But it's time that they migrate to diverse areas and do many things. And many institutions are doing it now. So that's very good. Ultimately, one key feature for the whole policy seems to be flexibility is the key. Flexibility at every stage in governance, in modeling, in regulation, and to students also. I think that is the kind of, you can say, effort which is there in this particular case. I'll go to my second slide, and with that, I'll close my initial remarks. Punitji, I hope there is a time for that. And
yes,
some
yes.
of the key
Before you
initiatives.
shift to the next slide, you coined rightly these words, access. I mean, in the beginning, I narrated these words, access and equity, quality. And accountability was also, suggested by you. What about affordability? Because
What about affordability?
yeah.
Okay, I'll come to that comment a little later. Or if you want my comment right now, I'll give you.
Not an issue.
See, India is a very unique place where the school education is very, very costly. I'm saying when I'm talking of a quality education. Okay, I'm not saying a token education. And we pay through our nose. And when we come to this same thing at a higher educational level, and it's highly, highly subsidized. I don't have to name the institutions like JNU or Jadavpur or Delhi University or Hyderabad University. You go and see the fee for any education which you receive there. They are supposed to be good. And the point I'm trying to tell you is world over, basic education, school education is your right, and it is given dirt cheap and good quality. And higher education, as and when you deserve, and you do it. Basically, that is the model for higher education. Here, the higher education has become so cheap that everyone blindly takes a plunge. After BA, MA, after MA, double MA, after double MA, PhD, because they think there is nothing. They'll get an I-card. They will get sometimes to do something else in the university or hostels, and possibly various other things which are there that helps them in the examinations they keep appearing. So I think education is not for sake of education. It has just become a support of life indirectly. And that is why the model, in my opinion, has a challenge. Education should not be given to me if I'm not fit for that education. I should be made to take skills or vocational things and start earning my livelihood rather than just simply doing any graduation. So I think affordability comes from that. Affordability should also have a connection with what is the purpose. And world over, see, same Indians, around 5 lakh of them at top level go outside India every year for higher education. Do you think they cannot afford the education which we are trying to give here in India? 5 lakh, I'm saying. 5 lakh basically probably will mean that at least 100 those quality institutions will be there in India, which they are trying to go outside India. And therefore, you can understand that if we charge reasonable affordability point of view, I think it will be good for this thing. Ultimately, privatization has been done in every sector. Industries have been opened. If you're worried about profit, then the industry should also be quashed with the opening up what happened in 92 or later. I think education also needs investment. Education is also like industry now. Education is also very diverse. We also need marketing. We also need various other things, facets of our functioning. And that is the reason. So anyway, I'll conclude with this slide. I don't want to hog the time right now. And the second slide is the key initiatives. I think most of us know 6% of GDP is being allocated or projected as an allocation. It will be difficult for us to use that much of money. Right now, we are hanging around 2-3% only. And we know at least this particular part will heavily go towards the government and government funded institutions. And as of now, they lack capacity to utilize the funds effectively. And the wherewithal is not there. But anyway, it's a good thing. GER to go 50% in next 15 years, a very, very ambitious target. Once again, like 10,000 universities giving degree. This will be difficult to achieve because what we have achieved in 73 years is only 27% or 26%. And if we are trying to go another 23, 24% in next 15 years, it's going to be a huge task. But fortunately, technology will support it. Technology, whenever it comes in a big way, it really promotes the number game. You know the number game of mobile, for example. Telecom was almost zero. Our tele-density in India was hopeless 20 years back. And all of a sudden, we are one of the topmost in the world. So technology can make the changes. Amalgamation of regulatory bodies, new regulatory structure with well-defined roles. These are the key features. Treating both government and non-government at par, I think would be something very good. Augmenting the accreditation systems is equally good. And then of course, teacher training, which was something not happening very, very effectively, or not enough provisions were there for that. I think these are some of the key initiatives which are there. The list is very long, Puneetji. I'll stop here right now. We'll keep discussing some other features of academics and research or whatever other things as and when you keep asking us those questions. Thank you.
We'll come back to you, especially on accreditation system, because that is vital. Because in the beginning, we mentioned about the quality education. So accreditation is the key, which will help every institution to develop a quality education system. Now, just to add on, uniform one single regulator, merger of UGC and AICT, but Bar Council and Medical Council, I think they're not included in this policy. Right, now coming to Dr. Ashwini ji. Many a times it happens that I have chosen a wrong train. So in the middle of journey, I feel that this is not my train. Mujhe Bombay nahi jana hai, mujhe Delhi jana hai. So sometimes you want to, drop your journey and change the path. But in earlier education system, there was no such provisions available, right? So might be I have opted a different course, but in between the course, I'm not finding it interesting, or the interest is subsequently developed to study something else, or I am evolved now to choose what is good for me. So in that situation, what way this NEP, new education policy, is addressing this particular issue? Dr. Sharma.
Namaste, Puneetji. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and also to Vikas ji. And of course, I welcome my senior Professor Sanjeev Sancheti ji, a well-known figure in the field of education, especially the higher education. See, we must understand that this is the first education policy of the century. So definitely, whatever the constraints we were having in the past, they all have been tried and have been taken care in this new education policy. And as far as your question goes, what has been planned out is that we must have a multiple entry, multiple exit system. That's the basic feature of this policy. And ever there should not be any distinction between science, arts, co-curricular activities, extracurricular activities, non-academic, academic. Basically, each activity which is being taught to us has a credit. So now the concept of credit has been developed, where basically it has been planned out that if a student is going for a course curriculum, let's say, for example, he goes to a university system. Now, basically, parents have been saying, you become an engineer, or you become you take a management course, or you become a arts guy, then you will take a ICS exam. So what happens is the candidate, the student who has done the 12th pass, he goes to BA or engineering or BArch like that. Now, he doesn't get a time to discover himself, knowing that what he can deliver, where he has got the intelligence level. Because if we see by theory, there are 9 levels of intelligence. Now, he may be very good in his speech, but he has been asked to do something with arts. He has nothing to do with that. So that is the basic emphasis which has been given in this policy, where basically the student who goes to the college education system will have a freedom to select the subject, which may be a combination of art, science, commerce, or any other subject, and basically he will earn the credit. Even if I remember correctly, 4 months before, I have written because of this pandemic situation, when the technology has been put to use in online education, I put a very, very smartly a paper in the Times of India and Economic Times also saying that in the times to come, there will be a time where you will do credit from different institutions, and these credits will club together to get a degree to you. So I think this is what basically has been framed out in this policy, where you can have a multiple entry. For example, if I do a course for a year, I will get a certificate course, or maybe if I do for 2 years, I will get a diploma. If I do for 3 years, I will get a degree, or maybe if I go for a 4 year, again a degree like that. So what is happening is, if somebody is willing to do some job after some credit, he's allowed to go out, do a job, learn more practical hands, again come and join the institution, but definitely within a time frame. It is not an open-ended time frame. And secondly, your credit will carry a value to you in terms of other your creativities also. So that is what basically the vision government has planned, that we must give credit to, we must give importance to the knowledge, the built-in feature, the things which we learn from the society, and there should be credit for that. So that is there is the new education policy, which is a very good framework which has been planned out by government. And I think they are even trying that whatever course he or she is taking in the higher education system or the college education system, the skilling component has to be there. Because finally what is happening is, the way we are the youngest country in the world, we have got the population of, I think, almost 50%, almost youngest population which has got in the country, where we see that we have got 64% in the working age group from 15 to 59, and almost less than 25 years, which is 50%. So I think skilling has been also plugged into the whole education system, where we are having a multiple entry and multiple exit.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. Now, when it comes to planning, we try our level best, right? Whatever remotest possible or impossible, we try to incorporate. But if the intent and content both are good, definitely a bigger percentages we are able to achieve it. So coming to Professor Sancheti, from your point of view, let us say, since you are leading a big university, might be more than 20,000 students are there in the group, if I'm not wrong, offering all streams. In what way or how, a roadmap can be prepared to execute, not taking much of the time, like 15-20 years, let us say for next 2 years and then 5 years, 2 वर्षीय, 3 वर्षीय, 5 वर्षीय योजना के तौर पर हम बात करें, तो किस तरह से a plan for execution can be prepared, and what are the challenges? You are on mute, sir. Vikas ji,
so you will have to unmute yourself. Yes.
No. System was not allowing me, so now they open it. Yeah.
We don't do. We just once we allow muting, that's it.
It's done. So I'll first try to add some value to your last question, which you had asked, for a simple reason that I'm a great deal interested in that, what was shown by or answered by Ashwini ji, and then I'll come to your question, take your question again. And this is the thing which I'd like to share with you, one slide here. Just a minute, I'll come to the slide now. Slide share, okay. This is a slide which I'd like to share with you. And please see it carefully. This is a slide which is a concept of ABC which you're trying to ask, Academic Bank of Credit. I'm very fortunate that I've been working on this particular scheme since almost more than a year and a half on behalf of UGC as a core team player. And this scheme gives you the choice of any subject or any combination, and therefore all the boundaries are broken: science, commerce, engineering, and whatever. It also merges all the modes of what you call the distance, online, virtual, regular, offline, everything, and therefore it becomes flexible education. It also makes you lifelong learner, means you can come in, come out anytime, and that's why this multiple entry and multiple exit, it can happen. And the beauty of this is that while most of you are hearing a 3-year degree program will become 4-year, I'm telling you, even a 4-year program can become 3-year based on the student's choice. And engineering can be done in 3 years if this scheme comes into existence in toto. Still, the work is in progress. It is not yet fully done. We are still working on that. And hopefully by December, this should be public broadly. And therefore, a 4-year degree can also be done in 3 years by an intelligent student. And maybe a student who is laggard possibly can be going slow. Similarly, international boundaries are going to be punctured or physical locations are going to be changed. Credits will be the new currency for education. You can convert into any product or any degree or certificate later. And then there can be a possibility that you can also have the new degree called, like we started BWalk some time back. There can be a Bachelor of Liberal Education, meaning thereby I've taken 4 courses of commerce, 4 of arts, 4 of science, 4 of engineering, 4 of medical, and I've earned enough credits to earn my degree. But I don't specialize in any domain. In that case, I can be getting a degree of what we call Bachelor of Liberal Education. So there are many features which are going to come into that. And that's why this will make it what we call a student-centric policy. Till now, education has been either institutional-centric or has been at the best teacher-centric. Now it is going to be the student-centric. Now, Puneetji, I'll request you for your question. You wanted something on the implementation, if I'm not wrong.
Please, yes, please.
Yeah,
a roadmap for execution.
Roadmap for execution. One thing I've already given you. For example, this is the biggest thing in the policy. Everyone is talking about ABC. Okay, the one which I showed you. This, the day the NEP was getting announced, our committee was working. We were meeting simultaneously on the same day, same time, discussing the finer things of this ABC policy. We have already drafted the regulations. The regulations have been given to UGC now for final process of approval. And hopefully they will go here and there in Law Ministry or wherever it has to go in MHRD, etc. And then it will be then pronounced as a new scheme. Already some consultative processes have happened with the academic leaders. So that is one step of execution which I'm trying to tell you. Now, if I see the 10,000 institutions becoming degree awarding, I've seen in last 1 year in Chennai itself, a large number of institutions have been given autonomous status. There are some benchmarks which have been specified. Tamil Nadu being a front runner in higher education, many institutions easily qualified. They got the accreditation, they got various other benchmarks of rankings and other things and diversity. And now they are getting that status of autonomy. So what I'm trying to say is, in terms of implementation, the things have already started happening. In terms of, let's say, the higher level regulatory bodies, I think the discussions are already on for quite some time. What will happen to UGC? What will happen to AICT? What will happen to various other bodies? I was myself involved as a president of AIU in front of the Parliamentary Standing Committee for UGC at some point of time. So ideas are all sitting there. Now that the main mandate is there that they want to do it, I'm sure they would know how to go about it. So I've taken some of the broad examples that implementation wise, it's not a challenge. The best part of the whole implementation is the ball is going to be in our court. The ball is not going to be in the government's court or regulatory court. The powers will be given to us. Autonomy has been emphasized adequately. Autonomy generally falls into the 3-4 categories called academic, administrative, managerial, and then of course financial. Now the financial one is a bit difficult, and without that to get full autonomy will be a bit difficult. But if we start charging reasonable fee and the government makes the allocation more and does it speedily, I think financial autonomy will also come to some extent. But all these implementation, for example, finance would not be a barrier in ABC implementation. You can always charge the fee which you like because it's a credit-based fee, and a student, if they like, they will continue with you. Otherwise, they'll go to another institution. So all in all, I'm not seeing too many big challenges, but we should not also be in great deal of hurry to implement things because we need to understand the basics first. We also need to make sure that the new regulatory framework also comes into the place so that we don't kind of confuse the system that we already started doing something and it's not acceptable now. So with that, implementational issues will be with people like us and Ashwini ji and all of us. and therefore I'm sure they will be resolved easily. And as it is, I'm seeing a lot of positivity in AICTE and UGC's approach in last 2 to 3 years, and certainly with the NEP also, that they are also ready to mold, change and all that. We know that as per the policy, you will be surprised that just 2 days back, we got the new framework of what we call the distance education and online education already announced. They have been broadly merged, to say so, which were sitting separately, which were qualified or were given different status in different ways. Yes, some difference will remain, but in terms of operation, they have been combined. And that's why their enactment of their law or whatever that policy or guidelines have come in a single document. So there are changes already happening, and I'm very positive about it.
Thank you. That should be the way, some people look bad in the good or some people look good in the bad. So that is the approach. Many people have criticized this new policy, whatever the way, rather than highlighting the shortcomings or the points to improve or gray areas. That should be the approach of any academician, that welcome the change and find out how to execute. Now coming to Professor Sharma, recently Global Innovation Index was announced. So Cornell University in Seek, France, collaboratively, they published this new ranking, and India has done wonderful in the year 2015. Our world ranking was 81, and now we are at 48th rank. So, this is because of the sincere efforts of all academicians and the culture which has been inculcated in the all campuses, the culture of research, and which is leading to innovation and further entrepreneurships. So, your take on the emphasis on research and National Research Foundation, which is already being introduced in this new education policy. Professor Sharma, your take on that.
Puniji, see what is happening is, if you see, and after this pandemic of COVID, I think everybody is very much aware that now we have to become a self-sustainable in country. And that's the reason Honorable Prime Minister has given a slogan, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And when we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, although the policy was drafted much before a year and was under discussion, changes, modification, but now basically looking to this all, now even we are coming up with a new policy which is called Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, which is again under formulation and which is likely to be there by October or maybe November. What I mean by that is the major emphasis has been research, because until unless we start doing research in the country, we are basically dependent on other countries, and especially a country like China, where we are importing almost 80% medicines and electronic goods. So Government of India in the NEP 2020, besides allowing the existing research supporting agencies like, let's say, DST, DAE, or maybe DBT, that is for the biotechnology, or maybe Council of Astrological Research, has now created, thought of creating a new National Research Foundation, which will basically try to give the funding to the research scholars. And they've kept basically three main concepts. First is that funding should be competitive, should be peer revised grant proposal for all types across all the disciplines. They should not be restricted to only particular discipline of, let's say, science, engineering, or anything. They will be open to all disciplines, because growth has to be in all the sphere of the life, whether it is science or the earlier, our, let's say, local technology or whatever it is. Then secondly, to seed, grow and facilitate research at the academic institution. That's the reason Government of India in the NEP 2020 has also clearly mentioned that universities will be mainly concentrating on research activities besides education, but the colleges which will be there, which will be autonomous colleges, they will be mainly involved in education only. So there is a emphasis on research, and to fund it out, basically NRF has been put in place. Then basically to act as a liaison between researchers and relevant branch of government, because in government system, if you feel, it is very difficult to go door to door to different organizations to put up your proposal, and that's the way concept of single window has been brought out through NRF for research scholars in the university, in the education system. And then basically the last one, which emphasis has been given, is the outstanding research and progress to be recognized. We need to award. If you see in the science, we had only the last Nobel Prize we had from the C.V. Ramana Saab. So now the government is thinking very clearly that we have to come out with more C.V. Raman Saab who can deliver, who can get the Nobel Prize at the national, at the global level. So I think NRF has been put in place to support the research and basically make students who are in the higher education, especially the universities, to go for more research.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. I would like to add one important point that earlier research used to be the domain of science, engineering, technology, and medical sciences. So now they have crossed the boundaries. Social sciences has also been introduced because it is very necessary to understand the social impact of any research. Would like to speak, Professor Sancheti, on this particular point, because whatever technological fruits we are enjoying today, they have been evolved or generated or innovated way back, might be 15, 20 or more than that particular time, late 70s as well. So, but now the application of those technologies or research is being exercised in a wider way. So, in what way this amalgamation of one stream to another stream, including social sciences, will help society by and large?
Okay, thank you, Puneetji. One small addition to the research point. While NRF has been introduced, it's a very good thing. The old existing systems will continue. Those channels are not going to be drained out in name of NRF, and therefore there is a lot getting added to the kitty of research, which was a bit small to say so. That is number one. Number two, if I take an example, for example, we use a lot of financial transactions using online methods now. And if there was a project sanctioned by Ministry of Finance, they look only at the finance angle, but they don't look at the cybersecurity angle. If Ministry of Information Communication Technology might look at the more of the technological angle of cybersecurity, but not necessarily financial domain and its application. Now, so that was happening prior to this, that individual ministries or organizations were feeding their own requirements, but not doing a multi or wide spectrum of things, what we call nationally coordinated projects. So I think those will come and those will be important. Another thing why we need a very different framework for research is possibly is because research was research and development earlier. We used to call it R&D only, but now the innovation has come in between. R and then I and then development. Innovation leads to development, and then it also leads to entrepreneurship. And if you can say that we can focus our energy or we can perform in this RIDE, it will be our pride, PRIDE, research, innovation, development, and entrepreneurship. I think so that is to drive all those things together. I think this NRF will be something very, very useful. Now I'd like to know your point once again, the specific point you were wanting to know.
Usually what happens, say somebody is doing research in materials. So they're exclusively working in their own team.
Interdisciplinarity, you mean to say? Okay. I can only quote it by an example, Puneetji. I understood, I could recall your point anyway. If I give you the example of last Indian or a person of Indian origin to get a science prize was Professor Venki. If you know, he studied in Indore and he probably did BSc physics. And then when he went to US, he did work in the biochemistry. And later when he got the Nobel, he got a chemistry Nobel. All right, I had a chance to listen to him recently when he was in Chennai. He's otherwise from Tamil Nadu. And therefore, this is a good enough example to tell you that at the highest level, how things change and all the new knowledge which we are developing today is not retained or limited to a given discipline. It is at the borders and the boundaries of those disciplines. I'm an electronics engineer, so is Ashwini ji. I can very well tell you the electronics will simply crumble if the materials don't do well. All the new things which are happening in battery or display or maybe the faster devices is primarily because of the newer materials. The second thing happens to be the fabrication techniques that we can do nano scale or 5 nanometer or 7 nanometer kind of a scale fabrication, 10 to the power minus 9 meter size of fabrication with reliability and scaling and numbers, whatever. You can say good yield also. All that is because of the materials. Then comes various other things called design, development and things. So electronics is obviously important, let's say, but everything else is also important with electronics. And therefore, what materials I need in electronics, I'll have to have the combination of materials in electronics. This is, I'm just giving you as an example. Same goes with every design. Same goes with, let's say there is a mining you want to do and you are developing softwares and design tools for mining. You need to have the mining expertise and you also need to have the computer expertise to develop those CAD. And that is the reason why we need interdisciplinarity very high. It's high time that we break those silos called I'm an electronics engineer, so one is computer, so one is mechanical and all that. Mechanical probably has moved to mechatronics, and mechatronics obviously has a lot of electronics, and all of them put together will have a lot of IT and computers. So it's all a what we call khichdi branch in that sense, but this khichdi is something order of the day in name of the interdisciplinarity. I won't be able to explain and won't like to explain here fully, but interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, all those are the new orders of the world. And therefore, you see, even in the medical domain, a lot of engineering is happening. Today, IoT devices, you get into a studio studied with IoT devices and walk out after 5 minutes. Those devices will take every parameter of yours and give you a report at the end when you're coming out that what ails you, what is your problem, what is your body parameters. So that's how the medical and the engineering or the technology is also combining. And therefore, it's a good thing that government is breaking those silos. And this ABC scheme is the real thing to break all the silos. I can take music with mathematics and electronics and maybe economics and make my degree. No one can challenge me. I am still going to be employable. That is going to be the order of the day. So multidisciplinarity is going to be something very, very important and useful for us in future.
Thank you, sir. Now, coming to Dr. Sharma, since you have led this department, NILET, you were Director General, and you did phenomenal growth there. You established centers in remotest Northeast as well as in Ladakh as well. So, because you could guess that there is a digital divide in the country. So to fulfill that, just to make an equilibrium for this digital divide, you tried your level best. So in what way this digital divide will be can be a barrier for propagation of new education policy, as well as there is a new term, National Education Technology Forum. In what way that will help to execute NEP?
Puneetji, first of all, I think the way things are changing in the system presently in the country, I think we will not have a digital divide as on such, because you see all mobile manufacturers are coming to country. Everybody is very keen to go throughout the country for the internet connectivity. So definitely there is a digital divide, I will not say, but in the times to come, we may have a divide in other terms, but we will not have a divide in terms of digital divide as such. Because now education system which has been framed from primary or maybe nursery or to school to college, everywhere it has been planned out that we have to use the technology, because it has been seen during this pandemic situation that this is the only way we can have a solution. Because in our school kids who are there, they are attending classes through technology, online classes. Those who are in the college, they are attending colleges. Even we all are using technology, working from home, doing the administrative part, managing the system, college. So I think definitely Government of India is basically planning that there will be a network dedicated for education only. This is one of the things which they planned out in the policy. And even there will be a dedicated center which will have a database created, stored for them, so that basically all type of tools and gadgets which has been developed for education purpose, they will be compatible with each other. They will be available on the server system so that they can be used by anybody, anywhere. Now, as far as the second question which you asked, it is definitely that the technology forum which has been created, that will basically help us to basically educate and give support to those who are basically lagging in the technology usage. For example, let's say now the government has allowed the ODL, open distance learning. Now definitely when we are saying open distance learning or online learning, which has been allowed now, you need to have a technology, you need to have a parameters to be monitored, the quality of the education system, the quality of the technology. So I think that will be monitored, controlled by this technology forum.
Right. Thank you, Professor Sharma. Now coming to Professor Sancheti, Eklavya learned through distance learning mode, right? Right from ancient time, the means have been exercised, but might be the nomenclature have been different. So right from beginning, the emphasis of education was to evolve, to know yourself. That was the basic foundation of education. It was not merely for development of skilling or acquiring some kind of knowledge to help the society, but broadly to evolve yourself. So, but subsequently, it might be post-independence, the purpose of education remained just to acquire a degree so that you can get a good job. And people used to display their degrees in their rooms. And I still remember many people, this used to be one of their important credentials. Whenever somebody is coming to their place, बच्चे से बातचीत कराते हैं, he has scored 90%, she has scored 95%. So, this used to be a highlighting point. So education for knowledge or education for employment, both are necessary, or first or later, or hand in hand. What way this particular, these two issues to be a balance to be created between the two?
It's a tough question, I would say, difficult to answer also, because it's people's perception. They think if they keep acquiring a lot of belongings and degrees also belong to them, then they think they are rich. Sometimes they don't count much, rather they confuse much if they do it. Earlier times were very different. Why 90%? I think I have met hundreds and hundreds of people who would thump their chest and tell I was good second division. And in any case, if they're first division, they'll be on the top of the world. That was the order of this. The percentage of marks and degrees are losing significance. The problem in India is a problem of plenty in one sense, that the job givers are less and job takers are more. And when I'm facing that challenge that I want 10 faculty and I get 500 applications, I pretty well know that I'll not be able to interview 500. And even if I try to do that, it will be purposeless and waste of effort. So we do the screening. Now, when we do the screening, we do the process of elimination. Who can be eliminated to bring it down to 50 or 40 or 20 or 30, whatever that number may be, you want to call for interview. And then that screening, you need to apply some parameters which can be measured equally across the domain. And that's when these degrees count. And therefore, the people have developed fancy that even if you want to be a chaprasi or maybe a police wala, you may still do a master's. That is number one. And because of that, you may get a short listing. The second thing I told you already, that people keep acquiring degrees because it's cheap. Not only here, in the world over, it was like that. I've seen many people going outside and doing second PhD. When I ask them, why are you doing second PhD? They say, if I do PhD, my cost of living, my cost of this, working, everything gets subsidized here. And therefore, I do a second PhD while I'm working on the research which I want to. And therefore, there are different models. People, till now, I would say, were more focused on degrees because of the employment. But now that big companies called TCS or maybe even Googles and Microsofts are saying, hell with the degrees to say so, not fully, but broadly saying that if you have the capabilities outside your degree, you may still be counted for a job or a consultation or a position with us. And that is why I said the new currency of education, which I showed to you, was credits and not the degrees, not the certificates, not the diplomas, because they only just tell you one document. And therefore, if I say that I have credited in this and I know this subject and they want this subject, they will still take me without degree for the job. And therefore, it's becoming more complex. Relationship is not necessarily a linear relationship between degrees and the employment. And last thing I would say, let us say I've graduated at 25 or maybe 30 years with my PhD. Now I'm serving as a faculty or a professor, whatever. Now, during my next 40 years, education domain jobs go up to 70 years these days. So during my next 40 years, am I going to teach the same thing? Certainly not. Am I going to study the same things? Certainly not. And therefore, I will be teaching new things. I'll be learning new things. And for that, I'm not going to sit in the class. I'm not going to do another degree because I have to teach. I cannot take 3 years leave again and do another PhD and again come and teach a new subject. It cannot happen. And therefore, I'll keep acquiring knowledge. And therefore, the new system of education will be much more centric for those people also, those who study while they are in jobs or while they are in an age group of 25 to 70, that they learn what they want to learn, to satisfy their quest for learning, to develop new angles, to facilitate multidisciplinarity, whatever, all those things. And therefore, education will lose what we call degree centricity. Not now, very recently, one of my friend who heard me some 2.5 years back in a conference where I kind of, disruption was the topic, and I shook all of them by saying the difference between a university and a non-university person training someone is only a piece of paper called degree. Same Sandeep Sancheti can sit outside the university and train the same person with the same qualities. But when I'm inside, I'm giving a piece of paper called degree. The moment that piece of paper loses its significance and the values of the skill and the traits which they learn, I'm sure a lot of changes are going to come in the job scenario. It is already happening. And therefore, my suggestion to all the audience here, those who are here, to not to focus much on the degrees alone. Degrees are important up to a base level, but beyond that, acquire knowledge, acquire skills, develop something, do something. And that's why importance of projects and seminars and social connect and innovation and development, everything is something beyond degree also. That's my answer to your question, Puneet.
Thank you, Professor Jyoti. I mean, rightly said, you need to make a balance. So since you have enrolled, obviously you will get a piece of paper, say degree, but the emphasis should be more on your learning part. If you are able to create a solution, if a doctor is able to analyze the problem of a patient and write medicine, he or she can prescribe, it means he has learned his degree in a right way. Otherwise, it is just a piece of paper. It loses its sanctity. So now coming back to Ashwini ji, you have been in government system, right? Role of government is quite important for any implementation of anything. In what way Higher Education Commission of India will play a vital role for implementation of anything?
Puneet ji, as on date, what is happening is there are a lot of regulatory bodies which have been controlling the higher education, whether it is technical, medical, managerial, professional. So there was, and even the accreditation part or the funding part. So definitely there was some conflict of interest, and this system were basically finding difficult. For example, I will give you a very typical example that because the creativity in AICTE is very much, they have allowed online inspection of the institutes. But when the same thing was approached to UGC, it was conveyed that they cannot do an online inspection in the COVID situation because their act and rules does not allow them. Now it is basically a mindset, nothing more than that. Now an institution which is running a technical course and also covered because of university is finding difficult how to go about that. So now that component has been important. Now what is happening is this will have again 4 bodies, which basically, I mean, it is an umbrella where there will be a bodies which will be covered by the same. They will continue the way they have been working. One is the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, NHERC. Another will be NAC, which is doing the accreditation part. Third will be HEGC, that is the Higher Education Grant Council. And the fourth one is the General Education Council. Now, all of them, they will basically try to ensure that there is a coordination, there is a common policy for all of them. Although, as Dr. Sanjay ji said, that the Bar Council of India and Medical Council of India have not been put under this umbrella. They are separate for the lawyer courses and the medical courses. But all courses have been clubbed together and have been put over here. And the basic advantage is that, for example, the General Education Council, they will basically try to align the courses with NSQF. They will frame they will go for a framework, that is the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, which will be almost aligned to NSQF to give same similarity, same uniformity in the education system. Now, even they will facilitate credit transfer also, because otherwise what will happen is, anybody, when we are saying multiple entry, multiple exit or multidisciplinary courses, if we go ahead with the AICTE and other regulatory bodies, AICTE will not accept the other regulatory body, another regulatory body will not accept the credit of the AICTE. So to take out this issue out of the scope, now this GEC, that is the General Education Council, will basically will make the equivalence of each credit and will try to allow them to go for the award of degree, diploma, whatever it is.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. And before moving to the next segment of which is questions from audiences, many questions are there. One final question from my side, because might be this COVID breakdown or lockdown has given an opportunity for us to push forward, might be 10 years futuristic approach, things which have which I've seen 3-4 years back in Singapore. Now we are doing it. Might be in normal course it could have taken more than 5-10 years, but out of this compulsion, like similarly we are interacting. Professor Sancheti is in Chennai, Dr. Sharma is in Jaipur, I am in Jaipur, Vikas ji is in Chandigarh, and many people, I mean, I'm able to see Professor Suneja sir, he's from RT Kota. So this is just because of this, crisis, corona crisis, so which is being transformed into opportunity. So cyber physical system is going to be a new buzzword. And in what way this will dominate skilling, innovation in the coming times? I repeat my question. In what way cyber physical system will dominate skilling and innovation in coming times?
Another difficult one for me. And I would say this cyber physical system.
आज गुरु से कहना लिया कि सवाल पूछना बहुत कठिन होता है.
बिल्कुल कठिन होता है, मैं जानता हूँ. And you asked a tough one, because the cyber physical systems are still pretty big. The application ranges are pretty big. The constituents of cyber physical systems are big. Cyber itself, by the name itself, gives you a little bigger space. The entire universe, you can say, is connected through that. And therefore, I would say that it is, for me, a kind of amalgamation of what we call computers or communications or networking and sensing and now control also. Okay, so all those things put together, I would tend to call them, I'm not an expert in that, but I'll tend to call them as cyber physical systems. And this will play an important role, because this allows you everything in terms of what you call anytime, anywhere, any mode, any language, any form, whatever. So suppose I need to do skilling today, sitting here, I think the haptics kind of tools would be available to me. I can still do the filing work and cutting and milling and all those works I can do sitting on my laptop, and my precision and my accuracy in my skill will be measured easily. There are certain sensors and controllers which are there in that. It is already happening, by the way, in what we call the aircraft trainers, which is there, the pilot training. So all that is done in this kind of a way only. You simulate all those conditions, and I've seen some of them recently here and there. The same thing is now getting into the medical system. So you can sit anywhere and do anywhere. And medical systems, you don't get the bodies to train the medical students these days very easily. And therefore you use the dummies and mannequins, and who can create the situations which you require. They are all part of this cyber physical world today, which is there. So they can help you to do everything anytime. And I would say that technology is now coming to support that. You had asked a question to Ashwini ji about the technology digital divide. I would say digital is going to be a provide now, not a divide. Reason for that, if you see any technology, did car come to you in the first decade of the car's arrival to your home, or let's say in Jaipur? I would doubt. Maybe Maharaja of Jaipur had it. It has come to us in last 15, 20 years, or maybe 25, 30 years. Every technology takes its time. But those were materialistic technology. They required a lot of material, physical things. Fortunately, electronics and computers are not like that. They require much lesser physical things, and therefore their growth or speed is becoming faster. Now every new mobile is getting launched in India simultaneously as in the world. Every new technology of cyber physical world is available in India as it is available anywhere. And therefore this technology is going to be a provider rather than a divider. You have seen the example of mobile. I need not say in 20 years it has transformed us. I think you have now seen the world of energy through solar. The cost has gone down to 2, 3, 4 rupees per unit, and available at the ease of your rooftop, and also doing help with the temperature control and cleaning of your roof and other things. And with that, now the third thing is going to be what we call the electronic vehicles. And electronic vehicles, less maintenance, less moving parts, combine it with free energy called solar in every nook and corner, the transportation will become cheap. And therefore, these transformations are happening, and these are nothing but part of the cyber physical systems. Will automatically control it, will automatically maneuver it, automatically maintain it. There will be self-recovery of something if something happens. And by the way, data centers are that only. If one part of the data center or server goes off, it goes into the self-recovery mode, or it does the mirroring with the servers and all that. Those are part of the cyber physical systems. They are going to be integral part of our life as it was car and something else earlier, civil engineering and mechanical engineering. These engineerings and their products are going to be important for us. Thank you.
Your take, Dr. Sharma, on cyber physical systems,
Punitji,
skilling and innovation.
Yeah, Punitji, see what is happening is the things are, the way technology is changing as on day. I think definitely they are going to have impact on our education system. There is no doubt on that part, which includes the artificial intelligence, which includes the 3D printing, which can have you a feel of things, which is basically is that until unless you see the things yourself, you do the things yourself, the learning process, especially in the field of technology, will remain incomplete. Why? What I mean by that is, if you do a dissection of a artificial or maybe dummy body, then you are less careless in doing the dissection part. But when you are playing it with a real live body or maybe a body of someone, you become more careful. So definitely, yes, this that use of technology, the cyber and all, and the digital technology will definitely help us in promoting and going for the higher education and better education, going to door-to-door education system. But definitely somewhere in the skilling sector, I personally feel as a end user of this, that definitely we have to work out a system where there is some component on the live activity or live shop floor of the system where the student or the candidate goes, does something. Otherwise, what will happen is he will be doing everything, but finally, once he's put to the shop floor in the industry, he will have, again has to go for maybe instead of 2 months training, he has to go for 2 days training.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. And now we move to the next segment, which is audience's questions. So I'm reading it out. Both are requested. Whosoever wish to address that particular question. This is from Professor B.P. Suneja. He's from Rajasthan Technical University, Kota. So thank you, sir, for writing this question.
जी इनको हम unmute ही कर देते हैं. Keeping in view his stature. Mr. Suneja को unmute करो. Mr. Suneja. DP Suneja.
Professor Suneja, you would like to ask the question or should I read it?
You can.
Question on interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary concept.
Yeah.
Suneja sir, सवाल पूछ लें.
So I have to unmute. Yeah.
You've unmuted. We are hearing you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Audible, audible.
Yes. Just I was asking the Professor Sancheti has told that the government and non-government university will be taken at par. At par in what sense, sir? For the
Yeah,
budgetary provisions or in what way they will be taken as at par?
No, it will not be in every sense. Government obviously will be looking after certain different things, but at par basically was more on the research, innovation, development, entrepreneurship, project funding, nationally funded projects, whatever is there, and
Okay.
using the expertise. Obviously, government will not fund us, Suneja sir, for, let's say I'm in private sector right now.
Right.
Government will not give me money. At the best, they can give money to people of weaker sections for which they have mentioned something. It can
Okay.
cut across all the institutions. Wherever, let's say, some student of weaker section goes and tries to study, he can be funded. So in that sense, there'll be freedom. Right now, it sometimes doesn't happen. And we were not treated at par. I also sit in almost all bodies of the country,
Yeah.
ICT, UGC, research bodies. You also must have been there. You
We know,
probably
sir.
know some of the protocols and the requirements right now.
Mhm.
So that is the only thing I was referring to. And government has made a categorical statement that they'll be given equal playing field kind of a thing in terms of such special things. Not for
Oh.
tuition fee necessarily, not for building the infrastructure also necessary. Okay, sir?
Thank you, sir. And one more thing, if you permit, Puneet ji.
Please, sir.
Basically, one thing always puzzled me because we are acquainted with the present system. All colleges are isolated, discipline-wise. Commerce college, arts college, science college. And once the NEP talking about the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, how we will club all these institutions which are having the separate identity, one thing. And how the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary concept will be implemented when most of the institutions are facing the problem of shortage of faculty even for the single discipline, sir. Sir, whether the NEP addresses to this aspect in particular or it is yet to come?
Suneja
Thank you.
sir, answers, allow me to answer that, Ashwini ji, you kindly take it
Please,
after.
sir, please.
The second part is shortage of faculty or expertise.
Ji.
I think that's where precisely the technology becomes a boon. Suppose Suneja sir can teach one subject and being in quota, he can teach only to quota students and probably in limited number of hours in a week. But if Professor Suneja is available technologically, I'm sure he can do the efforts double through online. But if I'm going to go further, that recorded and other things and interactive things which are there, Professor Suneja can be present all over the world and he can teach the subject with his expertise. Today, see, 5 years back or 2 years back, I could not have afforded to be taught by a professor from Stanford. But today, because of technology, you name a professor and you name a university, I'll go and take the course and I'll say, I've done this course of Harvard, I have done this course of Stanford or Oxford or Cambridge, whatever. So that is precisely technology comes into play where human limitations come. If human was so powerful to multiply and become 10 times what it is, probably technology was not required. So that is the answer for that. The first part you possibly asked about the multidisciplinarity kind of a thing, that how a commerce college will combine with science college.
Right,
No,
sir.
it is not necessary that one has to combine. They can come under one umbrella. Student can move between a 5-10 kilometer radius world over. If you go to Oxford is a village. Oxford is having dozens of good institutions. It's not one boundary called college. So you can go from one to another easily. So one can have that and one can take it electronically also. Even if you're sitting in Kota, but if your institution is 10 kilometers away, you can take it from there. So you can do the merging under an umbrella and therefore they offer all the courses. And even if you don't want to do it, as a student, I'll have right that I want to take these 2 courses from Engineering College Kota these 2 courses from Open University of Kota, these 2 courses from MOOCs, whatever, and I can build my degree. That is the power NACB gives me. Now, once institutions understand that Sandeep Sancheti is building his degree like this, then the institutions will also try to facilitate it. Best example you have right now is IIT Kharagpur. The only thing they could not start is medical college. They started everything else. Medical college they could not start because their act has no provisions for that right now. So act needs an amendment. That's a slow and gradual process. And therefore they might be into it. I don't know what is the stage, but rest everything has been attempted by IIT Kharagpur in terms of diversity, multidisciplinarity, all that can be done. I think this model of 10,000 institutions giving degree is based on this fact. Those who can become autonomous and grow in a multiple discipline will grow. Those who cannot will be submerged and assumed by some other institutions, and they'll become part of that. It need not be a contiguous campus, is my opinion on that.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot.
Suneja Saab, I will just clarify further. I mean, add on to what Dr. Sanjay ji said.
Namaste, Ashwini ji.
Namaste, namaste. See, what will happen is basically it is nothing. It is a transfer of credit which will start happening, and it is even possible that a student who is taking classes in Commerce College Kota may do some courses from Stanford, and even those credits will also be allowed to get a degree. So basically, that's the basic advantage of power of this. Physically, you will not have a boundaries for the college or degree. It will be the credit of the subject which you are having.
हाँ सर, हमारे दिमाग में भी वही बैठा हुआ है ना, एक कॉलेज में एडमिशन लिया तो वहीं का स्टूडेंट है।
नहीं,
माफ कीजिएगा, वो पुराने रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क ने बैठा दिया है कि आपको अपनी लाइब्रेरी चाहिए, मैनेजमेंट को अपनी चाहिए, फार्मेसी को अपनी चाहिए। तो अगर सब कॉलेज मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी में डिवाइडेड है तो मुझे यूनिवर्स टाइप का नाम देने की जरूरत ही कहाँ है? मैं तो डिवाइडेड हूँ बेसिकली ऑलरेडी।
Wonderfully explained, sir. I'm thankful, sir.
This so universe and divide, these 2 terms, you know, they're so self-explanatory. Now,
इन दोनों से मैं एक सवाल बस पूछूंगा एज अ लॉयर, मेरे मन में अभी ऐसी ख्याल आ रहा था क्योंकि सर्विस मैटर के केसेस करते हैं। अब काफी रूल्स में सर, you would also agree that whenever there is a post, there is a specific classification that this particular post with this particular stream. Now, once there is a multiple disciplinary, I think there will be a lot of homework to be done by the governments, not only state, but as well as the change these statutory rules for the appointment. Let's assume it's lecturer economics, lecturer English, or for that matter, any subject, because it's a multiple disciplinary. Now they're also laying stress on vocational. But at least whatever I have gone through these NAP, etc., this particular aspects, even on the webinars which I looked at in the YouTube, etc., they're not catering to this aspect that how the government it's implementing from this date, or they will cater into the statutory rules, because one point will come into being that once the student has passed from that particular multiple disciplinary, there could be an occasion that it's just like a very simplicity. It looks lecturer, you've done English elective and English normal, so that makes you sometime out for being eligibility. These, I think there would be challenges. What are your take on this particular aspect from both?
My take is in form of a question only, Vikasji. A very nice point from you. Presume that Puneet ji is a Nobel laureate, all right? But he has done, let's say he's in the sciences or engineering domain and a Nobel laureate. He has done BTech in electrical engineering, which the entire world gives. Then he has done his master's in electronics, because when he came to master's, the electronics became at the fore because the electronics emerged from electrical. And then finally, when he was doing his PhD, he has done in computers, because computers came out of electronics, even now everything. Now, you take him to any Indian institution, but for very top IITs or something, any Tom, Dick and Harry called HOD or some dean or some director will say, this guy is not fit for us because his degree, one will say his basic degree is not right. Another will say his postgraduate is not right. Third one will say his PhD is not right. Though he may be a Nobel laureate, he'll be rejected. And I can challenge you under the present set of rules, Vikasji will not be able to defend his appointment or help him with the appointment. That is how bad our system is. I have faced this thing many times, and I have seen many people who comes from sciences background, physics into electronics and materials into electronics and all that, find the same fate. What I have done is, I have generally moved that application into 2-3 different departments where it fits the bill. I know that everyone will reject it. Finally, I call all 3 of them together. And I tell them that you sit in front of me and between three of you, you decide where is he fitting. It is for sure the candidate is good and he's fitting somewhere. I need to take him, you decide, and people have understood it. So we need to force our way. You now need to make the flexible rules for that and make sure that the people are taken in not because the job is there. People are in because they are performing the job. That concept has to change in India. Once I get into government, नौकरी पक्की, अब मुझे कोई नहीं हटा सकता. पुरानी चीजें हमने हिंदुस्तान में जो अगर एक उस सेंस में कहें कि those have lived its utility और best before और date of expiry होगी जिन प्रोग्राम की, वो प्रोग्राम भी हमारे यहाँ बंद इसलिए नहीं होते हैं कि ये 5 फैकल्टी बैठी ये क्या करेगी, इनको पैसा कौन देगा. तो उसकी वजह से सिस्टम पे हम बर्डन बनते जा रहे हैं. I think we need lot of flexibility, and that is why this autonomy, giving powers to us that a vice chancellor or a board is able to decide what is required for the institution to grow, what is to be supported and closed, I think will decide the fate of it. And the law should obviously come in right perspective to support such kind of things. That's my answer.
Vikasji, I will add on. Vikasji, I will add on to this. See, that is the reason now Government of India is planning to have a single recruitment agency to do exam based on the percentage. Whether you are a MSc chemistry, you are BE electronics, you are BE mechanical, whatever, they will only measure your grade in that exam. Based on that only, the post will be filled up. See, a lot of re-engineering and process re-engineering is going on. And I think definitely you are right as an advocate that there will be a major challenge to prove that he has got a degree of MSc physics. But it is possible that he must have got a degree of MSc physics, but it's suitable for chemistry work also. That's the reason government is now thinking on that concept also.
So this is already
just take what Mr. Sandeep ji said. Now the issue is that once you said that he's having a multiple disciplinary courses which one has done, so sometimes they are rejected only for 2 reasons in law, because they say that I have done PhD. Then he said I want to be a clerical job. He said that once you are doing PhD and you are yourself assessing for a clerical job, you cannot do. And number 2, like an example what Mr. Sandeep ji had given, that he has done multiple disciplines. Then they said that it could be a rolling stone carries no mosses. He says that one who is a dissuade arrow will never reach the goal. So it's very difficult. One, you can choose the best. For that, the person who is choosing the best has to be very good. Otherwise, they say that the autocracy sometimes lead to total chaos, because he says that you can pick the man of your choice, and sometimes you just martyr the cause of the total education system. So
Vikasji, sorry to interrupt. Even if I choose, I would be accountable. So if I don't choose a right Puneet or right Vikas, Sandeep will also go with Puneet and Vikas, that's for sure. And therefore this accountability is an important aspect. अगर पूरे कुएं में ही भांग है जब तो हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं. But please remember that we are talking of quality and newness. Newness doesn't come with dragging my discipline for 40-50 years in whatever I am doing. Newness comes when I digress and when I change. मेरे ख्याल से आप भी खाना एक जैसा रोज नहीं खाते हैं, कपड़े एक जैसे नहीं पहनते रोज, और एक ही जगह घूमने नहीं जाते हैं रोज. The point I'm trying to make is that newness also has its value and should be given its due. And that's why आपको जान करके आश्चर्य होगा, आप लोग गवर्नमेंट वाले केसेस ज्यादा डिपेंड करते हैं, प्राइवेट में कम होते हैं. हम लोग रेडी हैं 2 या 3 डिपार्टमेंट में जॉइंट अपॉइंटमेंट देने के लिए आज की तारीख में, उसके स्पेशलाइजेशन के हिसाब से. और मेरा जैसा आदमी तो उससे भी आगे है कि मैं आधा टाइम इंडस्ट्री में काम करेगा, आधा टाइम एकेडमिक वर्ल्ड में काम करेगा, और करेगा वो जो वो चाहता है. हमारे हिंदुस्तान में कई सिस्टम उल्टे हैं जो मैंने आपको पहले स्कूल और हायर एजुकेशन में बताया था, उसी सिलसिले में बता देता हूँ. सिलेबस 5 साल पहले बन जाता है, उसके बाद 2-4 साल बाद संदीप संचेती रिक्रूट होते हैं, फिर उनपे कुछ थोप दिया जाता है कि सिलेबस में ही ये तुम्हें पढ़ाना है. ये भूल जाते हैं कि संदीप संचेती की एक्सपर्टीज क्या है और उनको क्या देना चाहिए. वर्ल्ड ओवर अच्छी इंस्टीट्यूशन में अगर कोई ढंग का आदमी जाता है तो उसको कहा जाता है भाई अब आप क्या नई चीज लाओगे, क्या पढ़ाओगे, आपकी क्या एक्सपर्टीज है. हमारे यहाँ क्या होता है कि जो पुरानी बची हुई डिस्कार्डेड जो दूसरे नहीं करना चाहते वो थोप दी जाती है. आई थिंक वी नीड अ ह्यूज शिफ्ट इन 180 डिग्री. सब चीजों को उल्टा करना है. पहले जैसे आपको एक ही उदाहरण देता हूँ, मेरे पास कई है उदाहरण. पहले हमारे जब आप पढ़ाते होंगे या पढ़ते होंगे, हम करते थे जब भी कि कोर्स कवर हो गया क्या भाई, टीचर पहले दिन से कोर्स की पढ़ाई करता था और कोर्स को कवर कर देता था और खत्म हो जाता था सारा काम. अब प्रिंसिपल कोर्स कवर का नहीं है, अब प्रिंसिपल है कोर्स अनकवर का, कि इस कोर्स का पोटेंशियल क्या है, क्यों पढ़ाया जा रहा है, कितना पढ़ाया जाएगा, कहाँ काम आएगा, पिछले से कैसे जुड़ा हुआ, आगे से कैसे जुड़ेगा। तो बहुत सारे कंसेप्ट अभी हमें चेंज करने हैं, हो भी रहे हैं एंड होपफुली होते रहेंगे, एंड दैट इज हाउ रूल्स विल आल्सो हैव टू बी चेंज्ड अकॉर्डिंग टू।
विकास जी will admit this fact कि इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ लॉ एक प्रैक्टिसिंग लॉयर ज्यादा अच्छे से बता सकता है rather than a person who is just teaching law. वो बेयर एक्ट को बता सकता है, लेकिन उसके implications, उसके limitations और सही interpretations वो तभी possible है जब वो एक practicing person who has moved out from the class through the courtroom and he has exercised that law, वो explanation हमेशा बेहतर तरीके से होता है. और now this final question, which is already 5:27. This is on accreditation. I'm forgetting the name of the person. The credentials accreditation system. The credit of accreditation system.
देखिए पुनीत जी, अभी क्या है इसमें, we have to have a confidence on the policy, as what you said in the beginning, that we have to find out the good out of the bad. That is the thinking we have to go for that. And I think accreditation system will also improve upon, because see, once you are trying to build all the verticals within the same umbrella, then definitely the commanding chief who will be there, if he is of good integrity, is of good knowledge, is aware of the system, I think the accreditation system will change. And now even I think we have to have a faith on those private partners who are applying for the institutions also. See, it is from both the sides. हम क्या करते हैं, जब किसी का एक्रेडिटेशन करते हैं या इंस्पेक्शन करने जाते हैं, तो हम थानेदार की तरह पहले नेगेटिव सोचते हैं कि यार ये पैसे बनाएगा, ये किताबें कहीं से लाया है, फर्जी लाया होगा, फैकल्टी की डिग्री गलत होगी, या ये एरिया नापा हुआ नहीं है. मुझे बड़ा अजीब सा लगता है कई बार जब कोई एक्रेडिटेशन टीम जाती है और वो बिल्डिंग को टेप से नापती है. अरे यार, छोटा यदि 1 सेंटीमीटर कम हो भी गया तो उससे कोई क्वालिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन पर असर नहीं पड़ेगा. व्हाट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट इज टू हैव अ गुड क्वालिटी टीचर. वो हम उस पर कंसंट्रेट नहीं करते हैं. हम वो पैरामीटर नापते हैं, 6 कंप्यूटर आए, दिखाइए कहाँ से आए, कितने के आए, कितनी रैम है. व्हाट आई मीन, डेफिनेटली slowly once the system is changing, the world is changing, the education system is changing, I am 100% sure with the way Sanjiti Saab is there, I think if we start thinking positively, things will change and the accreditation system will also have a quality in the education system.
You would like to, sir, add some point on that?
Just a small addition. Accreditation is now basically measuring the outcomes. Most of it is shifted to that, which is very, very important. For a long time, we have worked with the input-based system. Uski productivity हमें नहीं पता लग रही थी, but now we have changed. So in that sense, strengthening the accreditation system, doing tracer studies, satisfying the needs of the students in the later part of their life. Maybe it can be called as an adult student kind of a thing. Whatever is, these are all covered under accreditation. Number 2, accreditation जो अभी हमारे यहाँ हो रहा है, सिर्फ 2 ही agencies हैं. So we need to multiply, and for that I think we need a new framework, because number of institutions are large and they cannot be handled by just 2 bodies. So that's a challenge. The third thing, of course, is either ये बहुत बड़े लेवल पे हम एक्रेडिटेशन कर देते हैं, जो NAAC का होता है पूरी यूनिवर्सिटी को छाप लग जाती है, और या फिर हम बहुत छोटे लेवल पे करते हैं कि एक बीटेक प्रोग्राम या एक बीए प्रोग्राम किसी का हमने एक्रेडिटेट कर दिया. चाहिए शायद मिडिल वाला आंसर भी कि हमने एक डिपार्टमेंट को करा कि ये डिपार्टमेंट क्वालिटी, इस डिपार्टमेंट में जो हो रहा सब सही है. नहीं तो पता पड़ा कि एक पुरानी आईआईटी में 50 नए प्रोग्राम चालू करे तो वो भी सब हाईएस्ट लेवल पे एक्रेडिटेट हो गए, बनिस्बत कि उन्होंने अभी तक कुछ आउटपुट ही नहीं दिया है. तो एक्रेडिटेशन में भी काफी रिफॉर्म्स की जरूरत है, और इसलिए मेरे ख्याल से एम्फेसाइज करा है पॉलिसी मेकर्स ने इसके अंदर व्हाट वी नीड टू डू. और शायद अश्विनी जी कह रहे थे कि प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स को भी इसमें स्पेस होनी चाहिए. तो उसको चाहे प्राइवेट कहें चाहे कुछ भी कहें, प्रोफेशनल एजेंसीज जो बॉडीज हैं, दे शुड हैव द रोल. आई थिंक वर्ल्ड ओवर जितना मैं जानता हूँ, प्रोफेशनल बॉडीज जैसे इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंजीनियर्स, इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स, इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ व्हाटएवर आर्किटेक्ट्स, व्हाटएवर, उनका भी रोल एक्रेडिटेशन वगैरह में होना चाहिए, क्योंकि प्रोफेशनल वर्ल्ड को वो लोग संभालते हैं. So ये चीजें हैं.
So this is all for today. बस concluding remark में मेरी तरफ से इतना ही कि बंद घड़ी भी दिन में 2 बार सही वक्त बताती है. This new education policy is a new beginning for much needed transformation. Over to Vikas ji to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you to firstly Puneet, who made us connected with both of you. And the way he spoke about you, it has a multiple. As I say, the multiple N factor, he said that you will actually feel that you are enriched. And the with and substance, what we say in the legal terminology is that all these NEP or the earlier education system says that we are reminded of the Darwin theory, survival of the fittest, meaning thereby it's a private player or a government player. Ultimately, the best has to survive and people recognize. You may do whatever advertisement you want to do, but ultimately the survival of the fittest will do. And before I end up, I'm just reminded of a short story. It said that a man was appointed, he had a new axe and he could cut the trees for 5 in an hour. But another could only cut 4 in an hour. But eventually by the end of the day in 10 hours, he just cut 30 who was cutting 5 and one who was cutting 4 and now you're 45. And one who was doing it 5, he has cut 30. What is the reason? He said that in between I used to take the rest. I used to sharpen my axe. That is the professional skills which has to one to sharpen. One cannot do with the mindset which what Professor Sandeep ji had said, that sometimes you become a dead wood. What we in law we say they have to be chopped off. That is what compulsory retirement is. Therefore, my earnest request to everyone is, if one has to survive, is we just have to be a person who has to sharpen the skills with the flux of time, like what we are doing today. We have taken up the platform at what Professor Sandeep and Ashwini were saying, that we can take classes from abroad, and rather today is an occasion where we see 2 persons from Jaipur, 1 from Madras and 1 from this, and pan-India audience hearing us. It's a classic example that during the testing times we have changed ourselves and moved forward. So everyone stay safe, stay blessed, and in another pursuit to our webinars, tomorrow, since we are taking topics which are sometimes beyond law, we have amongst us the Tri-City topper, Darpan Aluwalia, who stood 80th in the academics. And tomorrow she will give us the decoding of the examination and interview, special emphasis on UPSC. So do stay connected with us, because she will give the insights as to how the exams have to crack. I take a step forward. It can be just like a part 2, like what Professor Sandeep and Dr. Ashmi said, that we have to sharpen our skills. So why not learn from a youngster who has been able to crack the UPSC at the 80th rank. So everyone stay safe, stay blessed. Khush raho, muskurate raho, aur gungunate raho. Thank you everyone. Namaskar.
Thank you, Vikas ji, Puneet ji, Ashwini ji, and everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.